Let me get to everything about the National Football League. We start off with a potential situation with the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts suffered a concussion on the field on Sunday in their loss against the Washington Commanders. He's currently in the concussion protocol. No word yet as to whether or not he's going to play this week. So it's potentially a week-to-week thing. We know how these concussions go. Could be longer, could be shorter, could even play this week. But no question about it. Right now, the Commanders seem to be in a position to even maybe play Philadelphia one more time in the first round of the playoffs. That would be the setup, and it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. But the Commanders yesterday ended up coming back to get the victory. Jaden Daniels, 5 touchdown passes. Here's Nick Sirianni on the status of Hurts.
Yeah, I haven't talked to the medical staff yet, so I don't have any updates on any of that stuff.
It seemed like he wanted to go in, and then he came out. Like, can you kind of walk us through what happened there on the sideline?
Yeah, anything that has anything to do with the head is out of our hands there.
Kind of a weird game where you scored 33 points with your backup. The defense forces 5 turnovers, but you still lose. Just curious what your biggest takeaway is from it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I have to be able to watch the tape and tell you everything what happened, but just sloppy. Sloppy with penalties, sloppy with too many men on the field, sloppy with our fundamentals. And when you play a good football team like we played today, and you're sloppy regardless of how many turnovers you force, it's going to be hard to win. And I think, what I said to those guys is like when it's sloppy with every piece of that, that's always going to be on me as the head coach.
All right, we'll see what the Eagles do moving forward. Again, they're still in a position to get a first-round bye in the NFC. Now, meanwhile, all the Dallas Cowboys had to do is have their season go up in smoke to start playing well. I guess, because that's what's going on. The Cowboys stay alive barely in the NFC playoff chase. They beat the Buccaneers 26-24 as Cooper Rush and that offense of the Cowboys has woken up in the winter. It's been a sleepy September and October, but for whatever reason, they've come alive. Bucs, no problem on offense. In fact, they had a chance to win this game late, but they fell short. Meanwhile, they no longer control their own destiny. They were a 4-point favorite going into the game, and the Cowboys win the game outright, which has Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield supremely upset.
I mean, we lost. It's disappointing. All 3 phases plus coaching. We got to coach it better. We got to play better on special teams. We got to play better offensively and defensively. We lost. We fell back in the pack. We got to eat it. Can't spend too much time on it. We had our chances. Just like everybody else, but it's a long season. We got 2 more games to go. We got to take care of us and then let everything else take care of itself.
I said it all along. This group will not quit, and I'll be damned if anybody does. That's the standard that we try and set. It'd be nice to not have to be in that situation if we would have taken care of business earlier in the game, but it comes down to little things late in the game and trying to execute, and gave ourselves a chance. And defense gave us a chance as well, so we just got to execute. I mean, I didn't learn anything new about the fight that we have. It's never been a question. For me, it's next man up mentality. I mean, overall, it's about the ball. I think everybody needs to learn that. It's obvious, I know, but even when you have 2 hands on it, got to be overprotective with it, and that starts with me too.
Right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to need some help to get in the playoffs. By the way, quick correction, Cowboys, even though they won last night, eliminated from the NFC. All right, the beat rolls on for the Minnesota Vikings. They're now 13-2 on the season. Who had that one at the beginning of the year? Very close, exciting game right down to the finish. They beat Seattle on the road 27-24. The Arizona Cardinals at one point led the NFC West. They were eliminated yesterday by the Carolina Panthers 36-30. Cardinals were favored. Chuba Hubbard had a big game on the ground. Also, the Miami Dolphins, I believe, if I'm not wrong about them, they're still alive in the AFC. They beat San Francisco. They've been eliminated 29-17. 49ers were favored. And the Rams go across the country and beat the Jets. It was cold. It was ugly. I think I saw that the Jets didn't punt once but scored 9 points. Is that right? 19-9 was the final there, as the Rams are now the heavy favorite to win the NFC West. Meanwhile, the Detroit Lions get back on track. They beat the Bears 34-17. Also, Josh Allen and the Bills, they improved to 12-3. They were scared a little bit against New England. Not sure how that happened, 24-21. The Bengals are still very much alive in the playoffs. How about this? 24-6 the final. They got a late touchdown to put things away with the Cleveland Browns. And Joe Burrow says winning and staying alive is where it's at.
We've had great energy in practice. Guys flying around, dancing, very vocal. Practice has been fun the last couple of weeks, and I think it really starts with the defense. The DBs are always bringing great energy at practice, and that's not really my personality. I'm more of a, what do I have to do on this play, trying to get motions and shifts and trying to operate. And so when you're in practice and you feel your DBs and your defense flying around, being vocal, making plays, makes practice fun.
Have you ever thrown a touchdown pass falling flat in your face?
That one was crazy. That one was crazy. No, I have not. My brother sent me a picture of it after the game. I might have to post that one.
I mean, it looked like you were reading a base when you got up.
I was parallel. I don't know how I threw it, but that one was pretty cool.
Burrow having probably the most underrated season for a quarterback right now in the NFL. All right, Michael Penix Jr., his first career start is a win and a blowout, 34-7 against the New York Giants. My gosh, the Giants are having one of those seasons to forget. They also were rooting very heavily for the Las Vegas Raiders yesterday so they could get the number 1 pick in the draft, and they came through. The Raiders beat the Jaguars 19-14, so right now it would be the Giants at the number 1 overall pick. Of course, on Saturday football, Kansas City won 27-19 over the Texans. And the Ravens have taken control of the NFC North. They beat the Steelers 34-17. All right, the college football playoffs on Saturday. I was pumping this up all week long as the best weekend ever of college football and pro football together. It was not. I ain't going to lie to you. Those games were horrible on Saturday. 42-17. Ohio State beats Tennessee. My gosh, the SEC had a tough time here. We're playing all these narratives as to who should be in and who should be out, but naturally, Tennessee should not have gone forward, I guess you could say. Also, Texas picks up a win, 38-24 over Clemson. That game final, Texas covers the spread there easily. Penn State also wins 38-10. That game was a blowout, so really nothing to discuss as far as that is concerned. But I would say the one positive for Penn State is not only did they win, but they got a lot of turnovers in that game, and that was what James Franklin was happy about.
You look at the stats that we focus on, the takeaway battle was big. 3 turnovers to 1. Explosive play battle, we won that. Third down battle, we won that. We tied the sack battle. The penalty battle, we won. That's a whole nother conversation. And then the middle 8, we won the middle 8. So ton of cool stuff. I can go on and on and on. But we got a team win, led from our defense in the beginning of the game. But at the end of the game, it was a team win. Offense, defense, and special teams. So
Myrtle Beach Bowl going on right now as we speak. First football game live on Newswire in a really long time. We have a live game going on right now. UTSA opened up as 8-point favorites. I guess some players are out for Coastal Carolina because this is now 12.5. Also, Northern Illinois plays Fresno State in the Idaho Potato Bowl later. Free agent signings. Jock Peterson signs a 1-year deal with the Texas Rangers. Sean Manaea is going back to the Mets on a 3-year deal. Phillies and Marlins made a trade yesterday. Jesus Luzardo goes to Philadelphia. The Nationals have traded for Nathaniel Lowe and Walker Buehler, according to reports, of signing a 1-year deal with the Boston Red Sox. Welcome back to Newswire here on SportsGrid. I actually have a lot of news to go over here on the show today. I didn't think that would be the case here. Just a couple of days before Hanukkah, Christmas. Pat Evans is with us from Legal Sports Report. He's getting ready for the holidays as well. And so happy holidays, Pat. We got some fun stories to review. Let's start off with a state in the South, Georgia. Hey, look at here. Maybe a possibility. That sports betting comes to Georgia in the next year or so.
I mean, yeah, this is, again, something you and I talk about all the time the past couple of years, is because Georgia has been one of the states that seems like it could get it done. Of course, they run into issues every year that kind of break it up and it doesn't get done. But earlier this month at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy sports company that offers a suite of pick'em products, opened a new, they hadn't opened it. It was a ribbon cutting for their new headquarters in Atlanta. And Governor Brian Kemp showed up and he said, you know what, I've been neutral on sports betting. I remain that way. That's my, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but this is, I'm going to stay neutral. However, if you're going to do it, let's put this money to good use and kind of outline some things like K through 12 education and other uses like that. So it's more of, it's not necessarily an endorsement by him for sure, because he says he's still neutral, but it is an indication that he is certainly open to the discussion, and we'll see where it goes. Last year, there was a great bipartisan collaboration to get a bill in the Senate going. It eventually fell apart because there were different factions that said, we need a constitutional amendment, which requires way more votes to pass. And so it fell apart. This year, the senators seem to be kind of putting it in the House's court. If the House wants to do it, then they'll take it up when it gets over. So kind of punting it from that point of view. But I expect something in the House to happen. And so the governor neutral, but sees positives. And, that comes on the heels of an op-ed we saw from a sponsor earlier this month, or it might have been last month, but that said, hey, the voters that turned it from a Democrat state in 2020 in the presidential election and turned it to a Republican state in 2024, that's the demographics that love sports betting. Let's give them sports betting. So it's going to be a fun 2025 legislative session in Georgia.
Yeah, indeed, and that would be one really big state bordering my state here in Florida. All right, not surprising here, and you have an article about this over at LegalSportsReport.com. There's a possibility, a possibility because a bill has been introduced. One of the more peculiar items to bet on, to me, all these years has been the election. And it does seem like this one non-sports event, there's a chance that this ends up going away. But I guess the question I would ask, Pat, is why? Why is this being introduced to get rid of it? I get it, but why are they saying it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of integrity concerns around election betting. A lot of money going into something that can have such a huge consequence on everything. That's kind of, I think, the main, operative thought behind this. Representative Andrea Salinas and Jamie Raskin have introduced a bill that is the same as Jeff Merkley's bill to ban election betting. There was a long fight kind of back from 2022. The trading platform Kalshi wanted to offer election betting, which is basically a stock platform versus actual, sportsbook betting in that sense. So you buy into it and it creates a stock market like vibe, and it can be done nationwide. And it got approval in October or September, October, around there. And between then and election day, it had $900 million wagered on it on U.S. House, Senate, and the presidential election. So it is a, interested market there that exists for this product. But yeah, the politicians are kind of saying, wait a second, this isn't something we kind of want people to bet on. That seems like you're betting on America's future in a weird way in that sense. So they're taking it to potentially get rid of it, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay, so the biggest story that we have to talk about today is kind of like a breaking story, but we're both Pat and I, by the way, we're trying to make heads or tails of this one. This is a difficult one. So there is a cryptocurrency exchange called Crypto.com. I'm very familiar with them. I'll leave it at that. But Crypto.com, they're a cryptocurrency exchange, and they made an announcement today that essentially you could have what's called sports event trading on their app. Now, Pat, what is the difference between sports event trading and sports betting? Because they're framing this, interestingly enough, in a way where you can bet, as from what I see on the app right here, any team you can bet on to win the Super Bowl for a certain amount of money. $20, $10, $5. And in the end, you win 100 if you win the Super Bowl. It's like a straight bet. So naturally, some purchases are less than others. For example, the Bills, you buy them for 20. If they win, you win 100. So it's 5-1. Same thing with the Chiefs. The Dolphins are 2%. So it's $2 to win 100. It's a much longer odd. But I'm saying something that's not true. It's not betting, though, according to them. It's not betting. It's sports event trading. How in the world did this pop up like this? And very specifically, what is like California and Texas going to have to say about this? Maybe it's also in places where you can use Crypto.com. My understanding is I think it's throughout the country, United States, you can use it. So a lot to unpack here for me, and I guess I'm going to probably need more time understanding this.
I mean, hey, it just popped up right before the show started. I came on here just trying to wrap my head around it myself. But it is actually very similar to the election betting. It is registered and regulated by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And it is a nationwide thing. It is basically, again, a stock market-like purchase. So, this is something that people have looked at. And when Robinhood started talking about offering sports betting potentially, it's great for futures bets, and futures prop bets and season win totals and whatever you want to say, because you can buy into it and then watch it go throughout the year and see what happens. So it's not necessarily straight betting. I would expect kind of similar thought processes behind what the politicians behind the banning of the election betting is doing, because it is an interesting kind of workaround from the state by state level regulations for sports betting that we've seen pop up over the last 8 years. I mean, as you said, you're still trying to wrap your head around. I am too. I know as soon as I get off the show here, I'm going to have to go kind of bang heads together and with the LSR team and figure out exactly what we need to do, because what a day to do this before the Christmas holiday, to bring this news out there. And as a news reporter, I have to figure it out. So kind of your guess is as good as mine right now as to how it's going to be received by customers and states, and see what it goes. But it is federally regulated at this point, it sounds like, from the CFTC. So we'll see. It's going to be fun to watch. Not super happy that it's happening over the holidays, though.
and technically it is not sports betting, but I got news for you. In states where sports betting is not legal, we have not heard I mean, listen, I'm for it, obviously, because any sports betting to me is good. But in states where it's not legal, I cannot imagine that this is just going to be a simple, workaround. And then all of a sudden it just becomes, can we use crypto.com in California, in Texas, in Utah, place like, I don't know. We'll have to circle back on this hopefully next week. Sorry to ruin your holiday. All right, finally, another sports book coming to Kentucky. I believe this is their 9th. Is that right?
Yeah, Prime Sports, a very small sports book in mostly Ohio, is launching in Kentucky, and it's a very niche, kind of for whales and sharp bettors. There's no limits and the like, so they're kind of building out from their Ohio. I think they're in New Jersey as well. So see what the customer base is in Kentucky. I think that's a super interesting state, potentially because of all the horse racing. So maybe that's what they see in terms of, ideal bettors. But another state, another sports book for Kentucky. So that's fun little launch news here over the holidays.
All right. Well, Pat, have a happy holiday to you and your family. Thanks again for coming on Newswire. And you and I, I'm sure we'll talk again after. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you as always, Craig.